to the next topic. We have Vishwas Mahajan here to talk about creating a business model.
Can you see this at the bottom? How many slides does it have?
99.
So it's going to take two days now. I've got a task to cover it in.
All the meats and everything.
I'll do it in 45 minutes. So I'm going to skip some obvious things that I would normally do in a workshop like this. The goal really now is to give you a little introduction to this concept and see how that can help and clarify some of your thought process. So, how many of us entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs? Majority of us. Okay, good. So, usually you start with an idea, right? And then the goal is for us to convert that idea into a company, right? It's a very interesting quote that I want to start with. We've all heard the word business plan, right? So plans are worthless, but planning is everything. That's what Eisenhower said. And the process that we'll do today is a little bit of an introduction on converting our idea into a business plan. But before that, I want to just talk about this. I know I'm skipping. Okay. No, we all, have you heard this term business model? And you heard the business plan as well? So what is the difference? How is business plan different from a business model? Yeah.
Model is a structural or have a structure.
Model has a structure. Plan doesn't have a structure.
Plan is a roadmap to achieve the model, something on those lines.
Okay. Anybody else?
Basically talks about the vision, mission, what we have.
Sorry.
The vision, mission, and how do you want to achieve, go towards that, the roadmap kind of thing. And where the model is actually translate into the revenue and cost streams of.
Okay. So model is one that converts into revenue and cost streams. Okay. Well, yes, you had somebody over there.
Business model is actually part of a business plan.
This one is a part of business plan. Okay, cool. That's fine. So let's go through with this. Typically, business plan would be a document that you would write for investors, right? Have you written a business plan that is just meant for you? It's also a useful place to collect all your hypotheses. Okay. So business plan is really a sum of hypotheses about certain things that you will do and what it will generate into. And it takes some assumptions. Excel is a very good tool. It has a very good ability to multiply very quickly. But you know Steve Blank, right? Steve Blank is a very famous startup evangelist. And this is so true. No business plan survives the first contact with customers. A business plan is good when you know what you are getting into. When the hypothesis that you're making has a basis, has a history, based on which you're going to extrapolate. But many of us as startups actually don't have the privilege of having that history. I mean, if Hindustan Lever is making a business plan for a new product that they're going to launch, they have a lot of things that they already know about. They know the market, they know consumers, they know the channel, they know so many things. But when a startup gets into a venture, all these are unknowns. All these are unknowns. So it's very hard for us to create a real plan. But in the startup context, it becomes somewhat difficult, although you have to do it for investors and some other purposes, right? So in a startup, what we probably should do first is to start to search for a model. Okay. Now, the business model is what we will talk about now. So business model, actually what I'm going to talk today in the next half hour or so is actually based on this book, which is called the Business Model Generation book. How many of you have read this book? Very good. For those of you who haven't, this is an excellent investment in looking at your business in a slightly different manner. So I would highly urge you to do that. It's 220 rupees on Flipkart. So let's go back to the business model. So I usually do this in a workshop, we do the exercise, I'm going to skip all that. But business model is a visual diagram of all that flows between your company and its customers, and it describes rationale of how your organization is creating, delivering and capturing value. Yeah? And all this is done on a single sheet of paper. So at the end of this workshop, at the end of this today's sessions, Mandar will email to you a document, a PDF file, which will help you put what I'm saying on that piece of paper. Okay. So what makes up a business model? It's a series of building blocks, and we will go through those in really short time so that you get to know what those are. And of course, then it is for you to actually do it for your own business. In a workshop, we actually take a case study of our own business and really build that model for ourselves. It's like this. So workshop format is good because you actually are forced to do this and follow it and do it in that particular time. Now if I tell you something, you'll go home, half of you will do it, half of you will not even. So in the workshop, you actually do it, and there is a peer group that is critiquing that, which is a big value. So when we do the workshop, as Mandar promises sometime, I hope that you'll be able to come back and we'll be able to do that in a group together. But a business model actually describes all the parts of the company that are necessary for your business to make money. Now what are these parts and what does this model comprise of? That's what we'll do. Now before I do that, there's a reason why we do this modeling in the way we are doing it. Okay, when two people talk, when two founders talk, when founders talk to their employees, the founders talk to their suppliers, the founders talk to their customers. When two people talk, they interpret things in their own way. There is no common vocabulary in which components of a business model are discussed and understood. I am saying something, somebody else is interpreting it in a totally different way. If I sit across a table, I am in a team meeting, and I've got a salesperson, I've got a marketing person, I've got developer, and I've got a tester, and I've got a customer support person, and a finance person, and a founder, and there is something we communicated. Do you think everybody will understand the same way the founder is communicating? Likely not. People are going to interpret things in their own way, in the way they look at their own role in that business. So when two people talk, there is only a certain area that is common, that is understood commonly, is same. Others are all understood very differently. On the business model canvas, it actually addresses this pain. So what we do is, we describe, challenge and design and invent business models systematically. When I say invent, many times when we typically do this as a workshop in a group, when you define or when you put your own business model, then your critics will actually tell you different ways of looking at it, and actually gives you a very good perspective from outside as to how a business model potentially could be generated. So on the business model, there are 9 building blocks. Okay. The first one is called the customer segment. Okay. What is a customer segment? What is a customer segment?
Your
This is a
target
question.
customer.
Huh?
Your target customer group.
Target customer group. Okay. What makes a customer segment?
Homogeneity.
It belongs to industry. What else?
Homogeneity.
Excellent. Front row seats are not allowed to ask questions or answer questions.
It depends on geography, demographic, age group, sex, and educational background or customer
Okay,
background.
got it. So you have a way to attribute on which you divide the customers, right? Okay, what else? Okay. Yeah, so I think by and large what you're saying is right. I mean, it's a subset of your customers. It's a subset of your customers, which you can divide up on any of the parameters that you just heard. But I think the most important thing is they behave in a homogeneous way when they do the purchase decisions. I think that is the biggest thing. So if you have, when you do it on a demographic, a 16 to 25-year-old young college-going student, if that is your, demography, target customer segment, the assumption there is that when you promote to them, it will have an impact so that because they buy in a similar buying behavior, so they behave homogeneously. Why it is important for you to identify who your customer is and your customer segment is? Because at the end of the day, whatever you just heard Radha and Sanjeev say, it is going to be directed to them, right? How many times have you actually looked at who my customer is? Have you done a customer definition for yourself? Can you describe your customer? Who is your customer?
So my customer, for example, is a salaried IT professional in the age group of 30 to 40,
Okay.
who has certain kind of financial savings.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
One who gets you business.
No, but that's a very, you can't see why are we doing this? Because we need to really identify as narrowly as possible, because we're going to do certain things to promote our business to them, right? So it's important to actually define it more clearly than that. But I think what he said is pretty much on the ball, and I will not spend more time on it, but it is so important for you to identify your customer segment. But what is also important for you to identify is all possible customer segments. So this should be one customer segment. And sometimes, depending on the product that you have, when I say customer, I don't want to get into the semantics of customer, buyer, influencer, and that kind of thing, right? But let's take an example. Let's say you're a toy company, right? Who is your customer? Parents or children?
Parents.
Depends on what age.
If you're a newspaper, who is your customer?
Advertisers.
Okay, so bottom line is, you have to, if you say, if I'm a newspaper, if my customer is advertiser, then that's not a complete definition of your customer segment. Is it a customer segment? Yes. Is it the only customer segment? No. Right? Reader is a very, very important customer segment. In fact, they feed each other. Who is a customer for Amazon?
Supplier plus suppliers plus
Sellers and buyers.
Sellers.
Sellers and buyers. Who else? Amazon has a service called AWS. Have you heard of that? Some of you use it. Who is the customer? Who was the customer definition for AWS? Who is the customer for Google? See, the point I'm trying to make here is when you define who your customer is, it is important to define all possible customer segments which your business is going to serve. Right? And for all what I just mentioned to you is what is called the multi-sided platforms that have come to existence. It's not that, when you search for free on Google, somebody else is paying for it. So who that person is and why is that person paying for it, there is a reason. Right? So Google has to define its product for both these customers. The search, you and me who search, and someone who's advertising and targeting you when you see those ads, Google ads, right? Same for Facebook, same for many things. So when you define your customer segment, you actually want to define all the possible customer segments of buyers, influencers, people who fund it, people who consume, whatever you like to call it. I don't want to get to that. The reason for this is because by defining it in that manner, you are actually able to create your offerings to meet the expectations of these. And you can always prioritize based on your bandwidth. But customer segment is the one which is the most important segment as we get into this discussion. And now there are so many other there's some examples of these segments that I have written here, and I don't want to go through the slide or read it. I'm going to share this with you, so you should have this information because we have really short time, and I want to leave some time for question and answers. So I'll skip this. But as you can imagine, there are different ways you can slice this whole piece, right? And there is no wrong way to do it. It all depends on your business context. Am I making sense? Yeah? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. In a workshop that we do, almost 2 to 3 hours are spent on defining who the customer is and defining the customer segments. And I have found that the peer group has added number of customer segments which were not thought of by the founders, which are genuine revenue generating opportunities for companies. The second is the value proposition. Right? What is a value proposition? What is a value proposition?
Why should the customer really come to
Yeah.
you?
Who's saying that? I'm not able to. Okay. Why should? Yeah. Say that again, please.
Why should the customer really come to you or use your product?
Okay. What else?
The pain you are relieving or the gain the customer is getting.
Okay.
The value that you're going to add to the customer's life.
Okay.
The problem the product is solving.
Yes. Yeah.
Value per unit cost.
Okay. Yeah.
Why my product or service?
I think all these are correct answers. But I think the most important piece you missed is why is that customer okay, value proposition is very unique to customer segment, first of all. Right? A value proposition for an advertiser is very different to value propositions for a reader. Right? Let's take an example of a newspaper. Okay? It's very different. So why is that customer segment going to come to you? But that doesn't stop there. As against your competitors. Right? So, when you define value proposition for a customer segment, always look at the competition. And the competition need not be the direct competition. For example, for a newspaper, direct competition is not another newspaper necessarily. It is also online media, it's also Twitter feeds, whatever that the consumer, that customer segment is consuming in terms of the content that is being delivered through the news or the content of that, right? So value proposition, very important, is that why should that customer segment, not customer generally, why should that customer segment buy your product or service as against available competition? Make sense? Can somebody talk about these two things now for me? That my customer segment is so and so, and my value proposition to this customer segment is so and so. Somebody wants to give it a shot? Think about it for a minute. You don't want to rush through this, but are we there? You have something? You mentioned about the customer segment, so I'm putting you on the spot.
And I'm trying to connect with you.
Take a minute. I suggest all of you take a minute to think through it. These are my customer segments. This is my unique value proposition for each one of those customer segments. And there could be, multiple customer segments can share a value proposition. But the value proposition should have, why should that customer segment buy from me and not from my competitors?
Let's look at TiE. TiE is actually a group of entrepreneurs coming together. So for me, the value proposition is I get an opportunity to network. So that's the value proposition which TiE has created for me. For others who are looking for mentoring, again that's a mentoring which is a value proposition created by TiE. So I would term it that way.
Okay, that's a good example. So let's put TiE as a case, right? So TiE means TiE's customer segments are multiple. Entrepreneurs. Within that there's early stage entrepreneurs, there is growth stage entrepreneurs. And then there are investors, is another customer segment, right? Mentors is another customer segment. I'm saying customer in a large, slightly broader sense, right? Now, if TiE has to be a successful entity, it has to be able to cater to the needs of all these different segments in a uniquely differentiated manner, right? So for startups, the value proposition could be opportunity to network, right? To mentors, it could be an opportunity to, satisfy, being able to share their experience and help companies grow. For investors, it could be an opportunity to create deal flows wherein they will get, correct? This is by and large, very high level you can talk about it. But this is an exercise I would really highly recommend you do it for your own organization. Are you ready with it now, or we'll go to the next one? Because we really have short time.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so specifically for the product that I'm working with, the way I see it, competition really offers.
No, ideally your answer should be, my customer segment is blah 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 blah. My value proposition is for this customer segment is blah 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 blah. As against competition, whatever it is.
So, like I said earlier, my customer segment is 30 to 40-year-old technology salaried person with a financial behavior where they don't know what they're doing with their finances. It's typical of most salaried IT engineers. The value proposition that I bring to the table is we allow you to organize and kind of data mine what you've done with your finances and figure out where you stand. And as compared to competition, which is really more focused on trying to help you with your expense management and budgeting, which is different.
Okay, that's fine. We can discuss and debate about it for a long time. But you got the point, right? Are you with me so far? Okay. So number of value propositions actually. And again, don't worry about reading so much. I'll share the slide with you. But what is it that you offer that is different is the question that you want to ask yourself all the time, and that to the customer segment, right? Many times the customer segments have to feed off each other. Unless there are enough readers, you will not get the advertising revenue, right? Because advertising will not are going there for the. But unless there is a good content, people will not come and read your content. Come to your site or come to your newspaper to read it. So it's these both things have to work in tandem with each other to create the value.
One quick question, sir.
Yes.
Can we find out from past customers about the value proposition?
That's a good way to do it. Why is your customer buying from you? And if you really ask those questions, and if they genuinely answer you, it actually may reveal a lot of things. Many times you think you are selling something to the customers, and customers are actually buying your product or services for totally different reasons. And that happens all the time actually. The customer voice of customer survey is a great way to do it. But when we are modeling a voice of customer, that's slightly different area, but definitely you'll get a lot of insights from what the customers are telling you.
Just to add something to this, Vishwas, suddenly the sale of washing machine in Punjab went up very high. And they did a survey and found out because people in Punjab were using the washing machine for making lassi.
Yeah. So, who could have imagined?
Yeah.
Right. So you can then expect Whirlpool to come up with a lassi machine and get into different kind of appliances. But it is so important actually to understand the behavior of your customers when they're buying or using your products, and that's marketing 101. Going back to this again, the next part is the channels. Okay? A channel is defined typically as a way, the conduit or the method in which you will deliver your value proposition to your target customer. That's a way in which you deliver your value proposition to your target customer. Several channels you can think of. When you're reaching out to customers, like your direct sales force could be a channel. Your website could be a channel. Channel has different roles depending on what your business is, and the role of a channel partner in the entire process of consumer experience has to be identified so that you can appropriately give the attention to that particular channel and make sure that the channel is performing that role. Because at the end of the day, if the channel doesn't perform that role, your sales or your market acceptance will be impacted. But many companies also use a direct route. You need not use the direct route all the time. Look at different ways in which your customer is being reached. And if your customer is using certain channels, it's actually a good idea to do that. So this channel is, in short, a way in which you are actually going to reach or going to direct, channel your value proposition to your target customer base. And the last one on this side is the customer relationship. Now, having got to the customer, how are you actually keeping your customer enthused about your product or service? That is your customer relationship part of your puzzle, right? And there are several ways you do that. Many times, these are some examples, but of course for your own product or service, there could be a very uniquely crafted experience mechanism. Many times, the boundaries of customer and supplier are actually changing now. People are co-creating experiences, especially in the social media world. You will find that you cannot say that I have delivered this to you, now you have to come back and consume it and tell me. Many times these experiences are co-created. A lot of times the experiences where the burden of creating that passes on to the consumer. Many times, there was a time when FedEx had to report to everyone saying this is the status of your parcel. Now you just go there and find out. Now the objective of then FedEx becomes how they can improve that experience when they are looking at where your Domino's pizza is a great example. They will tell you your pizza is in the oven, the toppings are being put, and the pizza is now in the box, and now it's, whatever, right? It actually, basically, by using a simple web channel, they actually enhance the experience. Not only that, they have totally outsourced that to you. Normally they would have, you would have called them and found out, where is my pizza, it has not come. You don't have to do that anymore. You actually, so that's the way in which you create and maintain the relationship with your customers. Revenue streams. I know I'm going really fast and we would normally spend a lot of time on in many of these, but we have to do it in 40 minutes. Revenue streams is, now you do all that, right? You have a customer segment, you have value proposition, you have delivered it to them and created a way in which you have enthused your customer, create a way in which the relationships are created and maintained, right? Why are you doing all this? To create revenue stream, revenue for your organization. In this, you identify all the revenue streams that can accrue to you. Many times, we look at revenue stream as very, very narrowly. But if you think through it, there could be possibilities of generating multiple revenue streams. And this is where even the in the workshop, people actually help define additional revenue streams. What are typical revenue streams? These are some of the revenue streams that you would normally think of, right? You could use it, if you sell something or allow people to use certain services, subscription, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And it could be a combination of revenue streams. So for a service, the consumer will pay something and the advertiser may pay something else. So at the end of the day, both these revenue streams make up your total revenue. We just did this example of newspapers. The price of newspaper that you pay doesn't even pay for the delivery of the newspaper. Right? Forget the paper itself and the printing and all that. It doesn't pay for that. 2 rupees, 5 rupees, whatever it is, right? So somebody else is paying for it, right? So if the newspaper only defined the subscription or the readers or the ticket price as a revenue stream, it would not survive at all. So you have to look at different revenue streams that eventually total up to your total revenue. And you might find that your primary service may not be the most profitable, but the ancillary services or opportunities of your revenue generation can actually create more revenue at much lower cost of generating that revenue. So look at all that. In the brainstorming session that you do with your founders or with your team members, maybe your customers or even your peers, you actually might be able to learn the other opportunities of generating revenue for your own product or service that you've not thought of before. So that's something that you should definitely try and do when you do this brainstorming. The next part of the puzzle is our 4 building blocks, which are typically on the left side of it. And I'll go to the actual canvas shortly. And this talks about the key resources, key activities, partnerships, and cost structures. Let me just go to that just so you know. I'll show you what to do. Okay, this is typically how a business model canvas looks like. Okay, so if you see the customer segments, the value proposition, the relationship channels, and the revenue streams typically fall on the right side of this canvas, right? Typically to do with right brain, where you will use a lot of ingenuity, imagination to kind of arrive at those. On the left side are the hard activities and facts, much akin to your left brain kind of activity, right? So we'll go through that really briefly. Okay, so let's go to the key resources. Now, key resources are things that you require for your business that have to be there so as to be able to run your business. And many times we underestimate the resources that are required. I mean, the startups, we have this challenge. We always under-resource many things. You know, just take for an example, newspaper. Financial deep pockets can be a very critical resource. I remember Times of India was a newspaper out of Bombay, and Pune had a newspaper, and Hyderabad had a different newspaper, and Nagpur had a different newspaper, and Bangalore had a different newspaper. Each city had their own little newspaper, right? But the moment Times of India started expanding, one of the first things they did is they came, let's say they came to Pune, and they offered Times of India for 1 rupee or something like that, for years together, right? Because they had the wherewithal to financially bankroll that kind of a thing. Today, Maharashtra Times in Pune is doing that, right? They give you like very dirt cheap subscription because they want to capture the market. So many times, deep financial pockets to overthrow the existing competition can be a very important resource. Today, Times of India has overtaken most of the established players. They have overtaken Hindu in Chennai, they have overtaken Deccan Herald in Bangalore. The Deccan Chronicle is having big trouble in Hyderabad. Pune, of course, nobody knows Maharashtra Herald, which was one time the newspaper here. So when you typically look at key resources, you tend to look at physical assets or whatever, but sometimes the other soft assets or soft resources can also be very critical to your business. Key activities that you need to perform in order to do your business. Depending on what your business is, these activities will vary. But identification of what is the key activity that makes your business tick. If you're a customer service organization, your call center or your service delivery aspect becomes very critical. If you're a manufacturing company, it's a totally different activity. So basically, these activities when identified clearly would help you to place them in the whole map. Partnerships. Gone is the time when you as an organization would do everything yourself. Most businesses use partners for a variety of things, and what those partnerships could be and what do they deliver to you is one aspect that you really need to be thinking through. Many times partners become very important part of your whole delivery value chain, whether it is for production, whether it is for distribution, for customer support, sales. Companies, just take this example of Quick Heal. You know, Quick Heal is a Pune-based product company. A part of their IPO proceeds, IPO was reserved for their partners. You know that? I think 5% of the equity was for partners, because it is their conviction that their partners who sell their stock and sell their products all over the place are key components. Without those partners, there would be nobody. So, depending on what your business is, the role that partners play can be different, but by and large, it's a very critical role that you will have to recognize and accordingly decide your strategies. And of course, the cost structure at the end, right? Cost structures, and again, this is not an accounting lesson, fixed costs, variable costs, and all the new metrics, cost of acquisition, customer acquisition, unit economics. I will not get into any of those, but those are all important things for you to identify. Typically, when you do this exercise and arrive at all these 9 building blocks of your business as is defined in this particular method or structure, what you will do is you will actually identify the key relationships between these as well. And for that, a number of things can be done. The customer segment to the value proposition connection, the customer segment value proposition, the delivery channel, and the revenue linkage. Those are all, when you put that on visually on this, it will all become very clear. Likewise, the cost structures. Where are your costs coming from? Are they coming from activities that you perform, or you have to, where are you investing? Where are you spending money in partnerships? Where are the cost structures? Are they fixed, variable? Where are they generating the costs? And at the end, the left side, right side minus left side is your profitability. Right? So, what this business model canvas does for you is actually it visually identifies all these pieces. Now, this canvas can be as complex as you want to be, and it all reflects how much thinking you have done, you and your group has done on this concept. But when you overlay this to the document, the PDF document that we'll share with you, these are all the building blocks that will make your business model canvas. So why should there be a business model canvas type of vocabulary? Now, when you are initially talking to different stakeholders, different roles, they interpret things in their own way. But if you have a business model canvas, you actually have the ability to identify which role is being performed by whom and make sense how each one of them fit in the your whole business model, right? Now they're able to actually identify that. And I took this example of Times of India. We talked about it, so I'm not going to get into it. But Times of India, I'm saying the newspaper, what are the customer segments? This is just an example. And this is a very simplistic example. Readers and advertisers could be the two customer segments, right? What is the value proposition? Right? Up-to-date news coverage and content. This is for the readers, right? Low price could be for the readers. For the advertisers, the customer reach or the readership. That's their ability to get to them. What are the channels? What are the relationships they maintain? And what is the revenue stream? Yeah. Likewise, go back on the left side of it. You identify the key activities. What are the reporting? What is the resources required? Who are the key partners? And what are the drivers for your cost structure? This is a very simplistically put business model canvas of a newspaper. I've taken the example of the brand that we all consume every day. But is it making sense?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. This is another example. Now, this actually is to tell you that a business model canvas is not a static document. Okay? As you start and as you keep working on your business, it evolves, and that is what it should be. So this is one example of a company that is in the medical electronics. And when they started their product, they did a business model canvas, and they identified these as the key components of their business plan. And I'll quickly skip through this to tell you that how their model has changed over a period of time. So the partnership model changed because they found that research hospitals is a partner. Okay. Within the hospitals, it was their spending committee. The value proposition to doctors changed. The customer segmentation became more clearer. And on and on and on and on. So, as you get experience in the market and as you keep refining this canvas, it actually becomes more and more clearer and more sharply focused based on what your exact business is. Now, why is it important for you to have this visually created and probably put on, in your office at a very prominent place? Is for you, your partners and your employees to actually continuously see where they stand and how, and also contribute. a good way to do this is to really use the technology called post-it notes. Okay, post-it notes actually allow you to keep doing something, sticking on it, and you can keep updating that. And if you have in your office a business model canvas that you use to discuss, brainstorm all the 9 components that we just saw and how they evolve over a period of time, that would give you a pretty good vocabulary to communicate your business to all the stakeholders, your employees, your co-founders, your investors, your customers, everybody. So that's the value of the business model canvas. Today, you will find that this is one of the things that people keep asking. Have you drawn a canvas? This has become a vocabulary people tend to ask all the time. So in a business model canvas workshop, what we try and do is to actually evolve a business model canvas for your own business. Okay. But today's session was really to give you a little bit of an insight as to what this is and introduce you, get your feet wet, to tell you what the concept is. And for those of you who already read the book or have already experimented with it, great. For those of you who haven't, I would recommend that you do that. And eventually, I think one of these days we'll take the workshop. So you please, join that, and we'll build some things together on this. Okay. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I know that we are time is definitely of a limitation, but happy to take 1 or 2 quick questions. Yes.
Can a part of my customer segment be my key partner? Is it possible?
Yeah. So actually, that's a great question, because today what is happening is that let's define customers a little more broadly. Okay. Customers does not necessarily mean the people who pay money and buy. They could be components or people or organizations or groups that actually help you get there. Right? Now, if your key partners are a component of that, and okay, let me also say the following. They're all, things get interchanged. You can have a partner in this and partner in that also. It's just that the way you approach it, when you're looking at the partner as a partnership, whereas as a potential customer who's influencing a customer sale, you would have different strategies, and you will, once you have in your own mind defined that as a role, then you will do something to make sure that they are able to perform that role. That is the point. Yeah, so you absolutely think so. That if you think that your key partners are also your key customers, because unless you satisfy them, you're not going to get to your customers. Absolutely true. So end consumers, that's an important chain. You can also put it in the channel, because they are the ones who are taking it. But the point I'm trying to make is this is a simplistically way to organize your business in 9 different blocks. And I'm not saying you cannot be one, and if you're one, you cannot be the other. No, it's not like that. Yes. Yeah.
So when you said channel, is it like the sales channel or the channel in which you deliver your...
Sales, delivery, customer support.
Okay.
These are all potential channels. Whatever you deliver as your product or service, how that reaches your customer. That's what the channel answers.
And maybe at the end, you can define what is business model and business plan.
Oh, you absolutely have to define yourself. And if you actually have done some work in defining that and validate it with your mentors or with your partners, it actually clarifies for them what you think is your, and they'll say, no, this is not what I want. I want it totally differently. That gives you a perspective on if you need to make any changes to that strategy that you define.
One last question.
So this is a great model to work with, and I can see that there are elements of brainstorming involved. How do you advise a single founder who does not have a team yet?
And a peer group. Come to the TiE workshop.
Yeah.
No, I'm seriously, without any essay. Because what there we do is actually your peer group becomes your critique. And you will be amazed at the value addition that happens. Amazing.
So great. Thank you, Vishwas sir, for the valuable insights.